Hey guys, so today I thought we would talk about what I'm planning to actually grow in the annual vegetable garden this year. I've made some videos walking you around, showing you where it's all going to be, but I've not really talked about what my plans are in terms of growing yet. So that's what we're doing today. It's raining on me. Okay, I've just relocated to inside my potting shed so I don't get too wet while we do this. But seeds. Right, so I have bought a mountain of seeds, and so when I did the Food Forest seed chat, I kind of sat here and looked through them all. I think if I do that with my annual veggie garden, it's just going to be hours and hours of me showing you seed packets, which is probably not very interesting. So instead I'm just going to kind of summarize, and I'll pop the variety names and things like that up on the screen so that there's a reference if you do care, but if you don't, it's not me waffling for hours and hours about seeds. So at the start of the year, I was so organized. I had all of my seeds sort of split into the annual stuff, the stuff for the Food Forest, and I had it then split into the times of the year that I'd actually want to be starting them, and it all made loads of sense. And then the year started, and I've started a few things now, and it has all become a giant mess. So in telling you about it, I'm also getting it straight in my head what I've got and what my plans are. So at this stage, I am in danger of not growing the things I want to grow purely because I'm disorganized, and if I don't find the seed packet on the right day, then it might not happen. So I really need to knuckle down, get organized, work out exactly what I want to do, what I want to grow, and then make a plan. I know that some people use like spreadsheets and things like that to be organized. I like the idea, but I just know what I'm like, and I know that if I'll sit there for a couple of hours and set it all out and get it all ready, then I'll save it and close it and never look at it again. So at the moment I'm just keeping a diary of what goes in when, and I will see how that goes in terms of organisation. But I think once I get a really clear plan, it'll be much easier to stay on top of what I've done. When you're just doing things willy-nilly, then it's hard to be organised. But if I'm doing things for a reason at the right time, then I think I'll be able to stay on top of things more. Right, before we start, I do want to say I am only going to talk about the annual vegetables that I'm growing from seed in this video. I already did a video about what things I'm starting from seed for the Food Forest, and then there's some like the other bits and bobs, my fruit and all that sort of thing, anything perennial I'm not going to talk about here today. It doesn't mean I'm not doing them, I'm just trying to separate the projects in my brain. So this year I am growing more than I've ever grown before in both quantity and number of varieties, so I really do need to be on top of things. So some of the things I'm going to be growing I have grown before, but bear in mind that I'm in a completely different place. The climate is different. Everything I've grown before has been in a pot or a container or a raised bed. Here I am in a field, pasture land that I have just put in ground beds into. So the situation is all different. I'm growing loads more, and I really am learning as I go. Okay, I tried to like bunch up, like categorize the things to talk about in a way that kind of makes sense to me, but some of them don't quite fit, so you just have to let that go. So first things first, I'm going to start with things I've already started because that makes sense in my brain. I have already started my onions. I'm growing a few different types of onions. I've never grown them before from seed, so this is all new to me. They are germinating well. I've got them in the cold frame outside, and they're looking good. I'll show you what they look like here. So we go through a lot of onions. I want to grow a lot of onions because I know that we will use them, and so I've got different varieties, some which are better for storage. So I'm thinking long term as to how long I can possibly be feeding us onions for. So excited about that. Next up, let's talk brassicas. I absolutely love brassicas, and the beauty of them here is that we can grow them throughout most of the year. So I have a full spread of brassicas that I plan to grow this year. So that includes purple sprouting broccoli, different varieties to get me through the majority of the spring and summer, cauliflower, Calabrese, Brussels sprouts, and some different types of cabbages. As I say, we absolutely love them, we eat a lot of them, so I'm really hopeful that that's going to provide a really good amount of food for us. Considerations that I have for my brassicas is wind. They don't love wind, so I'm going to have to really think about where I'm going to put them. I've grown sprouts and broccoli in my old garden, and they did quite well even though they were in pots, so that's quite encouraging, but it was a lot more sheltered. So we did struggle a lot with the cabbage white butterfly, so I ended up basically netting the entire end of my garden. So it was about 3 meters wide in a walled garden, and I literally just had scaffolding netting across the whole thing, which wasn't so pretty, but it did do the job. So I have a plan for how I'm going to make it work here. Basically a makeshift netted cage area using things that I've already got just laying around here. So I will do a video on that, but I am planning to have, while I do want to sort of polyculture and bring the permaculture ethos into my annual garden, I'm not looking to do like rows and rows of the same thing and then a row next to it something else. I am looking to sort of mix things in a way that makes sense. But my brassicas, I know I need to net and protect, so I'll have to think about whether or not it's worth using space under that net for things that don't necessarily need the net, just so that I can companion plant. But I'll have a think about that and we'll see how it goes. Next up are the nightshades. We eat a lot of tomato products. I would absolutely love to be able to grow enough tomatoes that I don't have to buy any sort of tins and things like that over the year. I don't know how feasible that is. If you've watched my tour and plans video, you know that we don't have a greenhouse, I don't have a polytunnel. I am going to be completely outside, so I do live in an area that is particularly wet and soggy for most of the year, so it's not ideal conditions, but I am still going to give it a good go. I've got different varieties of tomatoes. I know I'm doing a San Marzano in order to attempt to do enough sauces and preserved projects like that, and then I'm also doing some other varieties more for fresh eating throughout the summer. Along with that, I'm doing a selection of peppers. Again, not ideal environment for it, which I understand, but I love them, so I'm going to try it anyway and see how it goes. So I say that it's, you know, wet and dreary, whereas last year here we had really hot summer and really dry summer, so you never know. I am going to give it a go, and hopefully we get a good amount of tomatoes and peppers for me to both eat fresh and preserve up. I'm also planning to do a good number of potatoes and different varieties in order to eat fresh, salad potatoes earlier in the year, main crop later, and work on a storage solution so that we can be eating potatoes into the winter from our own storage. That is the plan. Okay, next up, let's talk like salad-y things. I am not a huge salad eater. I will attempt to be more of one, seeing as I'm going to be growing it, and they're so easy to grow and it makes perfect sense, but it's not natural for me. Nigel, on the other hand, likes the salad, so I'm going to grow some salad things and we'll see how it goes. I've got some varieties of lettuce, some spinach, but I'm not going to go nuts with salad things, knowing that I don't eat a lot of it, but I will do some leaves, some beetroot and maybe some radishes, and see how we go from there. I love cucumbers though, so I do have a good few varieties of cucumbers I'm going to try. Again, I'm all outside, there's no greenhouse, so I've tried to bear that in mind when I've picked varieties, but I did have a small greenhouse back in the old garden, and there were a couple of varieties that I did in there that I absolutely adored, so I have got some of those, even though I know they probably should be under glass. I'm gonna have a think about how I can maybe make that work. I'm also gonna do some celery and carrots. Now carrots, I have a bit of a problem with. That dripping is driving me crazy. Yeah, carrots are a bit of a nemesis for me. The first year I grew anything, I grew some carrots because I love carrots. We eat loads of them and they're really good for extending the season. You know, you can grow them early, you can grow them late. And the first year I grew them, it went really well. I mean, they weren't award-winning, but I had good sized carrots, we enjoyed them. And I didn't, you know, I hadn't put a lot of thought and planning into it. It was the first time gardener, I was just throwing seeds in there. And then the following year, I tried to grow carrots again, and my puppy at the time decided that digging carrot beds was just the funnest thing in the world. Interestingly, only the carrot beds. I don't know what it was about them, but he left everything else alone. But the carrots didn't make it. So anyway, that just ended up not happening. And then the following year, I obviously got a lot more into my gardening and things like that, done a lot more research. I'm thinking, right, what's the perfect way to grow carrots? Make sure they're raised up off the ground, mix in some sand, not too rich. And I just had nothing. They would come up and be like tiny little seedlings, and then they would just disappear. I don't know if it's slugs. We did have quite a serious slug issue. We were in the city. It was all sort of walled gardens. There was no dirt. There was no natural ecosystem. So there was just nothing you could do to keep them away. But still, I don't know how I got good carrots that one year. And anyway, I've only ever like managed to have a teensy tiny carrot ever since. So I am going to try carrots, but I'm not filled with confidence on it. So I am going to really put effort in on that one and hope that I can get some good carrots, because I do love them. I've got a couple of different varieties of seeds, so wish me luck on the carrots. Right, what have I not talked about? Oh, beans. Right. Beans, I have lots and lots of plans for lots and lots of beans. So I'm planning lots of different beans. We're doing dwarf beans, we're doing climbing beans, we're doing beans for fresh eating, we're doing beans for drying. We don't do our own meat here. We don't eat a lot of meat. The meat that we do buy, we buy locally, and it's great, but it is not cheap, and so it shouldn't be. So we enjoy meat occasionally. I do want to grow some sort of protein-rich things here, just to show that I can, you know, we eat a lot of these things already and I buy them in bulk, but it would be amazing to be able to grow my own. I know that growing enough beans and things like that in order to actually store and keep and use a winter is going to be quite an undertaking. And we might not get all the way there, but I would like to give it a good go and see what I get out of some storage, some drying beans this year, so I'm quite excited about that. As I say, we've also got some for fresh eating. I'm not doing runner beans this year. I always do runner beans and I don't really like them. I don't dislike them, but I find that I prefer pretty much any other French bean over a runner bean. So I think I'm going to forego the runners and just do climbing French beans and dwarf French beans, but we shall see. Also a note for broad beans. I have started broad beans already. I wish I had put some in the autumn, because I've just been over to my neighbours and they did, and they're looking great. Mine, I planted them a couple of weeks ago. They're popping their heads up now. I shall show you. So hopefully they'll be going out soon. I don't direct sow any beans here because the rodents. So I put bulbs out in autumn, just decorative things, and something's had all of them. I don't know if it's rats, mice, we get voles, we get shrews. Honestly, I've just given up trying to direct sow anything like that. So I've started them in pots in the cold frame outside, and then once they're, you know, a few inches tall, I'll put them out. I'm not expecting any particularly harsh weather from this point on, but either way the broad bean should cope fine, so I'm not worried about that. So I have two different varieties of broad bean on the go, and I will keep you up to date with how they go. But yeah, I really love broad beans, so hopefully I'll get enough to eat fresh, and then maybe I'll keep some in the freezer for later in the year because they make me happy. Now I've got a couple of things that I'm going to put in this category. I don't really know if they fit here, but they don't really fit anywhere else, so I'll talk about them now. If we're talking about proteins that I can grow at home, I have got some chickpeas and some quinoa. Both of those I think are potentially not easy to grow well in these conditions, and probably going to be more hassle than they're worth in terms of the time it's going to take to get the harvest that you're going to get, even if I do manage to get them to that point. But again, it goes along with my little experiment for how much protein I can grow myself. So I'm going to try both of those. I'm not expecting the world, but I just think it will be a fun experiment for me to try, because we eat a lot of those things. So if I could grow them myself, I'd like to know how much effort it is, and I'd like to know if it's even possible or feasible for me to do here. So I'm going to do them on a relatively small scale this year and just see how that goes. I'm also going to be growing peas. Love peas. I've just started some early peas, and I will continue to grow peas throughout most of the season and into the autumn, which is great. I'm also going to be growing a fairly significant amount of sweet corn. I absolutely love sweet corn. It makes everything better. So I am going to hopefully grow a good amount of sweet corn. I've got a big patch out there that I've just thrown black plastic on, and that's been there all winter. So hopefully that's done the job of killing off everything that's underneath, and then we will have a good, I think it's a 4x4 meter patch of sweet corn. So fingers crossed for a good sweet corn harvest. Again, we don't have the perfect conditions for sweet corn. It's not hugely sunny, but as I say, I love it, so I'm going to give it a good go and try my best with it. Okay, so I think that's everything that I'm planning to grow. If it's not, I'm sure I'll tack on a little bit at the end of this where I fill in the extra bits and bobs that I've forgotten about. As I say, all my like herbs, annual herbs will be going in this garden as well, but I'll talk about that separately. And everything perennial will be going elsewhere, so I've not forgotten those things, it's just not in this video. You may notice that I have not included any squashes, and that is because I don't like them, which is a shame, because they're a great thing to sort of extend the season of eating fresh or well, you know, stored vegetables from the garden, but I really don't like them. So I don't know, maybe I will attempt to attune my taste buds to enjoy a squash. But at the moment, I think I've got enough going on that I might just, maybe in the future. But at the moment, that's not an accidental omission. I'm not planning any squash for this year. So that, I think, is everything that I'm growing in the annual garden this year. I've already started some of these things. The onions are in, the broad beans are in. I've started my chilies already, and my tomatoes are very soon to get started. So I am getting underway, but as I said at the start, I'm disorganized and it's making me uncomfortable. So my next step is to get really organized, know what I'm doing. So having talked this through, at least it's a bit clearer in my mind what I'm doing and why. My next video is going to be the actual plans for how I'm going to make this happen, because so far it's all well and good to be like, here's all my seeds, I'm going to grow all this stuff, but turning that in to a reality of where all this is going to go, how much space I even need. I've been putting in-ground beds in this garden all winter, but do I have enough space? Do I need to do more? I'm running out of time to do those things now because I'm going to get busy doing everything else that comes with spring. So I'm going to get organised. That's my next step, but that just gives you an idea of what I'm going to be growing, so that you can hold me accountable and ask me how those things are going. So thank you very much. As I say, next video will be talking about actual plans for how to make this work, how we're going to handle it in terms of companion planting, succession sowing, and how many of each of these things I'm going to do. So that's coming next. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.